go ahead and kill Discord and send out notices.
We are at risk of having a flat Earth report come out of the House Intelligence Committee as to what happened with Russia.
A flat Earth report. Those are striking terms.
Flat Earth report.
A flat Earth report. Those are striking terms.
All right, thanks for joining. Today is Monday, December the 30th, 2019. And the topic right now is predictions for 2020. I've been looking back at this year in particular, but also last year and certain patterns. Things that we're expecting to happen based on the media and what it projects or forecasts. Because conspiracy theorists often talk about predictive programming or predictive scripting. Well, there is a meta script and there is a storyline that they're following. And by looking at what they're reporting to us, we can kind of discern where they're going. So I'm putting 12 predictions for 2020. Yeah, go ahead and share the stream. Thanks for joining, Trey Forrester. And look, if you're on YouTube, it's because I'm keeping that chat open because many of you haven't been able to break the habit, which I understand. But you might want to get into the D Live, so I'll put a link in the chat. Okay, so let me go ahead and finish sharing. All right, so if you're on Patreon, you probably just got a link. So let's see, how many domestic terrorists do we have? Okay, we're joined by Bob Dazzler, Glenn Clark, AJ206. All right, so let's go ahead and come up with some predictions. This is going to be an interesting year. This could be the year that the whole thing just falls, this whole house of cards. So let's go ahead and start. So this is 12 predictions for 2020. We've been doing this every year. And I played the 2019's predictions last night, and then the night before, last week I did the 2018 ones. Trusty Shellbeck says, hello, ME infidels. Oh yeah, you Mandela effect deniers, right? Right. Hitchens Razor. That's it. Hitchens Razor. There is some news here having to do with flat Earth and about pretty much the statistics, how many people have basically fallen into this idea that, yeah, we've been lied to about everything. And they're really trying hard to mix it up with climate change denial and anti-vax and chemtrails. And I think we just keep it simple. Keep everything based on what we can observe. No augmentations, no dome. What's with all the dome talk? So 2020 is a good time to kind of start fresh. For example, if you're not auto-hoaxing by now, you lost the plot a long time ago. The whole guardrail phenomenon is huge. False flags being exposed as misdirection planted by the intelligence services in order to prevent people from going over the guardrails and calling it all out for theater. FlatFact says, not a habit for me, but DLive doesn't stream well for low internet service. Okay, there's other options as well. There's Twitch. There's float.app, where if you go to infiniteplaneradio.live. But sure, whatever works for you. I'm going to try to keep the options open. In fact, I'm going to start streaming on Instagram as well. And soon, once we have the budget for it, I'm also going to be streaming on Mixlr, which will probably be like a 24/7 stream. Okay, let's go ahead and go into this though. 12 predictions for 2020. And we have reasons for all of these, of course. And I'm going to have to ask you to help me out a little bit because I haven't had time to go through and come up with 12 that I can stand by. I think I've got about 4. So first and foremost, space war. And it might happen on 113, might happen on 311. Not guessing on the dates, but sometime this year there's going to be a space war. The space war will also tie in this other prediction that the ISS will be put down or out of service. I'm not sure if they're going to do it dramatically or not. I considered a couple of different possibilities here. It might get shut down by a Russian satellite, a kamikaze, or it might be put down because they don't have the budget or there's some type of breakup of international relations and all the astronauts hug one last time and they jump back down to Earth and they just let it fall, in which case it will burn. Still within that 33-year window from the Challenger immolation. Yeah, Mixlr is a great platform. It's just audio, and a lot of what we do here is video. And of course, if you ever miss anything, you just go to infiniteplaneradio.com for the archives. Space Wars, is that a movie? Yeah, it is. But it's going to be just like 9/11, if you remember that movie. This movie will be played through the news, and the auto believers in the public, which is 95% to 99%, will assume it's true. And most of the ones who don't fall for it or don't assume it's true will only differ in the interpretation. They won't call it fake. That's just going to be us. And it always is. Okay, so space war, ISS being put down. Okay, I also think that the MSM will attack the Mandela effect as it attacks flat Earth. But they're going to say it's an example of dangerous misinfo leading to mental illness. Now, they've already branded mentally ill people as terrorists, as I predicted they would last year. So the next stage, of course, is what Trump promised after the El Paso Walmart shooting, which is 5150 everywhere. Just 5150 locked up, disarmed. We'll put quarantined. So I do think we'll see more instances of people being locked up for their beliefs. And so on quarantine of conspiracy theorists. And again, they're making the connection between conspiracy theory and domestic terrorism. Even with these attacks in New York, we have the black Hebrew Israelites killing Jews. Well, why? It's a conspiracy theory that the Jews did it all. That's why we don't like feeding into it here. The scapegoats. And there are so many people who will defend their scapegoat against all reason and logic. And it's like, you're being played, right? It's a red herring. But okay, so those are my 4 predictions of the 12. Does anyone else have any? I'm sure I have some more, and I considered last year that they would make doubting climate change a hate crime. So I'll put we'll put this. Global warming denial criminalized. I can definitely see that happening. We still need 6 more predictions for 2020. Okay, with the flat earth topic, one of the predictions, which isn't hard to make because we know what is actually happening, there's a certain timeline here and where we can expect it. So, flat earth will have an answer. Courtesy of Mad Mike Hughes. And that's going to be this summer. So, coming summer 2020, Globe. Well, we'll see. Gordo's Garage says Space Wars means conflict in an endless expanse. Hey, speaking of endless expanse, I have this idea. We're going to have to look into it. So, Sturgio Studios 10. It's a channel on YouTube, and he talks about the moon. Not Sergio's, it's a hair studio. He has this interesting theory about the moon, which I want to show you. Here we go, Sturgio Studio 10. I'm going to give you a link. Everyone needs to subscribe to this channel. Glenn Clark says we haven't had an enviro disaster in a while. We actually have. The California's, the PGE, that's all, the California fires were all blamed on climate change. So no, we've had that. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the work of this channel, and again, this is Sturgio Studios 10, he believes that the moon is more or less a disk. It's flat. So flat moon. And he believes that the moon itself is created by an interaction, an energetic exchange between above and below. That it's a plasma event or phenomenon occurring in the ionosphere. And he has matched up the continents as you would see them on a polar projection with the dark spots on the moon, which we may be miscalling craters. He doesn't believe they're craters. So what he's positing here is that from below there is a projection. If you can imagine Batman's projection, they have the logo in the shape of a bat on top of a spotlight and they project it on the clouds. Well, in the same way, he's suggesting that there is a projecting effect from below, on the earth we stand, but from below us, and that the moon is this condensed, this is the lens, this is where it's lensing, this is the actual projection. But what is it projecting? Well, it's projecting through the oceans, through the water, and that's what you see as white. And where it's going through land is the dark. He's gone through lengths to compare the texture of the bottom of the ocean to the surface of the moon. Because in a way, it's something like something of an X-ray or something. But here's where it gets interesting. If this is true, the land masses that we know only account for about half of it, and most of it white, aka water. So the other half would constitute land masses much larger than the ones we have, and far less ocean. But here's what I noticed this morning, because I was looking through these again. The North Pole, as he sees it, is on the top right quadrant, close to the middle, and I'm circling it now with the cursor. To the left of that would be unknown land masses, if this is true. If this is true. Again, this is Sturgio Studios 10. But here's what I was thinking about this morning. I was like, there's this book that I read a few years ago called World Beyond the Poles. And in World Beyond the Poles, this guy describes, here it is, Worlds Beyond the Poles, Physical Continuity of the Universe. These are documentations of expeditions, fantasy or not, but what he talks about is that he says there's land appearing up from the terrestrial points other than poles, attainable by movement straight ahead from the imaginary poles. So in this book, in these records of travel, this guy suggests that when you go to the North Pole, there's more land if you keep going out straight. And so that just sounds fantasy. Like, what do you mean? Like, does he go in the earth? What the hell? How does that make any sense? Well, now it makes sense to me. If our whole map has been screwed up to hide land, and if Sturgio Studios 10 is correct, and that there is more land, as evidenced by the projection above, well then going north of north in this sense would put you in that territory. It would put you in these other lands. And I'll show you some of his maps just so you can see how he projects our continents over it. So the world beyond the poles might actually have some validity here. Okay, so here's the South Atlantic Ocean. Okay, he calls it Terra Vista, because obviously we don't have names for it. There's Africa, Asia, Australia is this round one on the left. Then you have Brazil. But the North Pole, again, I'm circling the North Pole. It's not dead center. So if you were to continue north, it would follow. You would go into that. Anyway, again, this is Sturgio Studios 10. Interesting idea, worth examining. And look, this is the thing. Whatever you think about this, you have to admit that there is a startling a way that these continents do in fact align with the so-called craters above. You can find this alignment, and the key is Look for the Australia mark on the edge, and then look for the North Pole region. It's easy. I see it every night. I can't unsee this now that I've seen it. So I'm looking at this thinking, okay, well, how would you access those other lands? What would be your points of departure? And then that book came to mind. And I thought, yeah, that would probably do it. So, anyway, and this might also explain some of the inconsistencies with these so-called flight patterns, because the idea of Antarctica, as I see it, it may as well be a full continent, but it wouldn't explain the whole perimeter. Anyway, it's just an idea, but until I'm not really sure if I'm going to do this myself. I do want to do some overlays, but I think we'll have to do it live. I'll do it in Photoshop. We'll see if we can take some maps and see if it actually does align like this. Blank Search says Antarctica is supposedly the edge. Well, the way they explain it is that Antarctica is like some type of icy barrier outside the range of the sun. But if you look at the way this map presents it, if this is the case, then it wouldn't be all ice. I mean, in other words, if you look at the area at the perimeter of the AE map, I don't think we'd be looking at full-on ice, except only in certain regions. Kara Capper says, that's what I could see as a teenager. I thought it was me. Well, the key is take a azimuthal equidistant projection and put it over the right side of the moon where it's mostly white, and then look for the part that would correspond to Antarctica. And it does have an interesting correspondence. I mean, I can't deny it. I've been looking at this for some time. It does look like an image. And I wouldn't have seen it before if I wasn't so familiar with the flat Earth map, or so-called. I mean, take a UN flag and put it over it. And again, it's not the whole moon, which also debunks the dome. That's why I'm saying, why still push this dome nonsense? Because if there is a dome, well, then how do you explain this other landmass here? Is there like a wall cutting it off? No. And it kind of lends credence to my early statements about the matter, that they gave you the dome model to contain you, so you don't even think about land beyond. And they tell you, no, flat Earth is all about being special in the center of the universe, and North Pole is where God sits with Santa. No, that's all bullshit. Okay, so let's go back into the predictions. So far we have Space Wars. And okay, this is Space War. Let me get a little more specific. USA versus China, Russia, Iran. ISS put down, MSM will attack the Mandela effect as it attacks flat Earth. Examples of dangerous misinfo leading to mental illness. They're going to bring about the 5150, locking up and disarming and quarantining conspiracy theorists. I think we will see that happening, staged or not. Global warming denial criminalized. Not sure how they're going to affect that, but I think they can make the case that it constitutes a hate crime. Globe Shite says, I still love the idea there's more land out there. Yeah, exactly. Why do you think they keep telling you there's a dome? Glenn Clark says, that's the way I see the Earth, surrounded by more and more land. Chad says, will the powers that be throw a new disease scare? Well, they gave us vape AIDS. Is vape AIDS still happening? I did put on here that Flat Earth will have an answer courtesy of Mad Mike Hughes. I don't know what that answer is going to be. So I'm going to put that one last. And these aren't necessarily chronological, but they mostly are. Like, so for example, I put Space Wars and ISS falling down at the very beginning, because I do think that's the order. Okay, Gordo's Garage 66 says flooding as shown on the back of the dollar bills. See, I'm with you on that. Flooding. Flooding. Now, let's see. Let's get more specific. Is there a city named? Like we called it that the Space Needle would burn on 11/3. It wasn't the right Space Needle. Glenn Clark there says there could be a barrier, but it doesn't have to be a dome. Well, it could be a barrier, or it could be a big ring of unicorns. And you can't run past it because they'll trample you or stab you, or both. There could be a lot of things. I don't get that argument, though. It doesn't have to be a dome. Like, it could be what? What else could it possibly be? Are you saying an ice wall? If it's an ice wall, is it a barrier if you can go over it? Anybody saying barrier is just repeating the mantra that they gave you so that you wouldn't contemplate the idea that you are in an enclosed system that's largely a product of lies and constant reinforcement of these lies. Gordo says broken dam or created tsunami. Well, we don't know that there's not more suns. Check this out. I found this interesting little. It was on the wiki page for Antipodes, and it was a 7th century pope. And he was talking about the other side of the earth. And it mentions here that the first Roman geographer who asserted that we had two habitable zones, north and south, here he goes. He says here, his name was Pomponius Mela, and he said that it would be impossible to go from the north to the south, or south to the north, because of the unbearable heat at the equator. So there used to be a firewall barrier before this ice wall concept, but I just find it curious here that the first geographer working for Rome says, "Oh, you can't go further than that because it's a firewall." Doesn't that seem a little shady? And of course, this was before we got our first terrestrial globe, which didn't have North and South America. I mean, I think that they want to keep the world as small as they can. And there's another part in here where Pope Zachary says, the belief that the earth below the equator would require another world, other men, with another sun, and another moon. And it's heretical. Boniface had apparently maintained that Virgilius of Salzburg held such a belief. So the idea here was that, no, you can't go past the equator because it's too hot. And they would have to have their own sun and moon over there to work. So it's preposterous. Anyway, this is just a topic that's about antipodes. That's the points of land that are diametrically opposed to one another on the globe, kind of like if you dig a hole, you come out in China. I've always wondered how that works on the globe model. So you dig down, and let's say you do it. Let's say you can dig through the entire Earth, right? Once you go halfway, and then you're going towards China, are you digging up or are you falling up? And does centripetal force play a role? Because now you're in a spinning ball, and as you're going down deeper into the ball, I mean, there'd be so many changes in the force, and I'm wondering, at what point are you falling down, and what point are you falling up? It's just the relativity of it. It's kind of absurd, but what I'm wondering is, like, at some point, I don't know, I need to talk to a believer in this model to explain it, because a lot of it's just magic. Neil deGrasse Tyson has a new show coming up, and maybe he can explain it. They brought him back. They waited until the public forgot that he's a groper. Everybody forgave him, or they forgot, and they're moving on with it. So yeah, you'll see more of him very soon. Okay, we still need some more predictions. So there's going to be flooding. Did we name a city? I'm going to go ahead and put it down here. Sorry, Seattle. Seattle gets the nuke. It's the fake nuke, of course, but the world will think it's real. I'll throw in there EMP. Yeah, Osher says, would gravity flip you up? I think that's how you know you're halfway. Flat Earth Kid 1988 says, I've done this thought experiment and it doesn't work. Linda Curtis says, the farther you go up, the objects disappear. So they can't be landed on or reached. Well, right. But let's say that hole's already dug. Like if there's already, like we just meet halfway, like Elon Musk's company, Boring Company, the drill company goes down, China drills, they meet halfway. At some point, I don't know, I'm going to have to talk to Lord Stephen Christ, or maybe Brother Ernest. But the physics of a hollowed out planetoid are not the same as the physics of the cell Earth. The concave Earth model, or cell Earth, has that the celestial realm, the stars and the sun, are on a ball inside of the ball, like in the middle above us, and that we're in a ball. But then the hollowed out planetoid is completely different, and it actually makes a lot more sense, and it could theoretically exist. We could create one. I think they call them Dyson spheres. They suggested this before in science fiction, and I've heard people on space news referencing this idea of building a shell around your habitat over time. Anyway, Trustee Shellbeck says the 2017 huge flood in Houston was assisted by the local government releasing the dam waters. Okay, we'll put Houston. Okay, what about school shootings? What about terror attacks? Any other terror attacks? See, if the nuke thing happens, that's going to be, I believe, it could be Japan, it could be China. We've had a lot of interesting things in the Metascript, like the Pearl Harbor event, then we had the Pensacola event. Each of these kind of suggesting major terror attacks. Flat Fact says, I'm at the furthest south of Australia at the moment, southeast of Gipps Island, 41 degrees Celsius yesterday. Okay, so you live down there, upside down, or whatever. Have you personally taken any flights? Like, why hasn't someone just purchased some tickets and go one by one consecutively through the 5 gateway cities? Just fly all 5. And if you can do it, then Antarctica does exist, as they say. AJ206, they would blame North Korea too. Right. Yeah, they could. We'll put NK here. In fact, he did say he was going to hit us on Christmas, but Christmas done missed us. But there was something else here about Kim. Okay, here we go. U.S. North Korea rocketing towards New Year's Eve deadline, threat grows. Okay, so we just postponed it for New Year's. He didn't want to be drowned out by the other Christmas news, like the 11 Christians being beheaded by ISIS. I still can't find that video. Have any of you been able to find it? I was like looking for it all day yesterday. I found screen caps, I found leading stuff, but nothing that actually showed it. Okay, here's one, and this might have some credence to it. This is from our comments. Somebody here says that there has been a steady stream of Trump assassination jokes since 2016. Right, when you say jokes, you got to say it in quotes when you're talking about the MSM. Maybe an apparent attempt in 2020. Could be, but if you remember too, in the 2015-2016 lead up to the election, there was all kinds of talk like that, led by Alex Jones, where Alex Jones actually cried on air. And he said, I think they're going to kill the reincarnation of George Washington. So they could be bullshitting just to get the voters out. Just like, look, he doesn't have the underdog status anymore, Donald Trump. He's not fighting against the system. He's not battling against Obama. It's not. He's in charge. So they've got to make him look like a victim. That's probably why they impeached him. They're just trying to get you involved. All right, what do we see here? North Korea has played by President Trump's rules by freezing long-range missiles and nuclear tests, but its weapons programs. This is WWF, by the way. You know that these rockets are fake. If you look at North Korea's rockets, they're all balloons. They're all blimps. Let me write that down. North Korea's rockets are blimps. And he gets them from Jeff Bezos. I guarantee it. It's the same crap. It's not SpaceX. It's Blue Origin. They take those rockets and they paint them camo. And they say, oh, this is a threat to your life. You got to vote for this guy. So they've unveiled 5 new launch systems. A new approach. Testing, nuclear arsenal, etc. It's all fake, but when are they going to escalate? Military experts believe they're practicing runs for rocket engines needed for ICBMs. Is anybody here actually afraid of ICBMs? The new weapon, resembling a Russian Islander missile, flies at low altitudes and can be controlled to evade missile defense systems. It's a short-range missile that can carry a nuclear warhead and strike anywhere in North Korea and Japan. It has an 1,800-mile range. Okay, here we go. Someone called it with Seattle. It says if a North Korean submarine can venture far enough into the Pacific, they could threaten U.S. mainland. So you might be on it. Oh, look at this picture, just so you can see it. This is released by North Korea's Central News Agency. Okay, look at this. This looks like every single phony space blimp launched by these others. It's just another one of these cylindrical, cylindrical airships with a little bit of jet propulsion and a whole lot of CGI. Going through comments. If you haven't subscribed to Patreon, to the newsletter, there's a link posted below. Once we get 1,000 people on Patreon, I found a number of AM stations where we can get paid slots, and we're going to 10x the size of the audience, and we'll get a whole lot more phone calls every night from all over on a number of topics. And this is going to become very important when we get into doing not only real-time deconstruction of the nightly news and the fake stuff, but also as we get into examining other things with a very critical eye. I look at everything. We looked very closely at the Mandela effect and found it to be meaningless. But the mud flood theory, whatever it actually will reveal in the end, has to be examined closely. And the more people we have across the country, the more eyes, the more experts, the better. The only reason we were able to debunk the fake death of Nipsey Hussle so fast is we had so many doctors and EMTs calling in saying, no, you don't do one-handed moving chest compressions on somebody with 6 holes in his torso. And then throw him in the back of the vehicle and drive him 35 minutes away. Zeros 11 says, I wonder if they'll fake a manned Mars mission in 2032. Okay, let's add that. Because the space race has picked up again, so whether or not they go to war openly, there will be a split, and China has already talked about this. China will go to the moon in 2020. It's not about technology. Remember that. The limiting factor for moon or Mars colonization isn't technology. It's CGI. If you're a good enough CGI artist that you could fake Mars colonization, you'd get a job right now with the Chinese government. So yes, China will go to the moon in 2020, and our space agencies won't call it fake. You notice that? Russia doesn't say your moon landing's fake. Our experts can prove it. You can prove it. Sitting in your basement, you can prove the moon landing's fake. You think Russia can't prove it? You think they're going to lose the space race over a crappy rear screen projection movie? No way. They're all in on it. The space race is fake. And they're all in on it. Kara Capper says there's mud flood evidence everywhere in Manchester. Strawberry Satellite says war satellites. Yes, there are. There is an outer space treaty that was ignored by China and Russia and Iran, I believe, and India. And this was the treaty that said they wouldn't use anti-satellite ballistics. But in the meantime, they have been developed. Russia's got kamikazes. China has ones that can swallow up other satellites. And this was also mentioned in the PNAC conversations when they planned your 9/11. They said, yeah, we're going to bring you guys a new Pearl Harbor, a catalyzing event to move into this new century, which they've called a Chinese century. If you remember what Dick Cheney was saying, it's going to be a Chinese century. That was the whole idea. Well, look, I think we're going to see it. China will beat us to the moon, and no one's going to contradict anyone. And of course, they're going to do it without our cooperation because they don't want capitalism on Mars. They don't want capitalism on the moon. They're going to be the first ones to colonize everything if this is what happens. And I think it will. I think the space station coming down is a big part of it. And it doesn't have to physically be shot down. I think it's a matter of will they have a breakdown of these international relations? Will we continue to speak the same tongue? Or will the Tower of Babylon fall? Okay, I'm looking through your predictions. I think I missed one. Hold on a second. Trying to come up with 12. Okay, here we go. Independence Day White House event. Okay, let's go ahead and put one down to the date. Okay, I got a few here as far as death fakers. Okay, so death fakers. Okay, so I think we have a few here that we think may be taking off here soon. Shia LaBeouf, Cardi B, Who's the other one? The girlfriend of the Weekend and Beaver, because they always share girlfriends. What is it? Gomez, Selena Gomez. Another moon goddess name too. Possible 27 clubber. So we'll put her down. Glenn Clark says, would it be safe to say the next big event is coming, the next 9/11? Oh yeah, that's the thing that's going to bring about Space Wars. I put that number one, and I think it's going to be a 113 or a 311. The new 9/11, based on a lot of predictive scripting, a lot of it. The new predictive, the predictive scripting has suggested that this new 9/11 will in fact be taking place on an 11 date, like 11/3, 3/11, maybe 113, one of these. And I mean, it's kind of interesting. When we were looking at this predictive scripting that was talking about some type of new event, it totally signified that this event would involve space. And right now, there is something to be addressed when it comes to how we approach outer space. And this is all in the narrative, it's all in the script. So basically, the script is America's a pariah, we keep polluting, we have 5% of the population and the wealth, and we happen to pollute so much that everybody's affected. This is why we need a one world approach to solving the environmental catastrophe. But then, since we're leading in the space race, we may go up there and pull down $1 trillion asteroids into geostationary orbit and totally destabilize the world's economies. And the greenies don't like it. The greenies in America and the commies. Because the whole green movement is a mask for communism. So are we going to be going into space as a communist unified world state, or is it going to be communism and capitalism? See, they've created this contention on purpose. Glenn Clark says they're setting it up nicely with a new $1 billion budget space agency. Well, so the space wars are going to happen. It's just a question of, is it going to be spectacular fireworks, 9/11 style? Is it going to be economic war? But I do think there's going to be a dissolution here. And we have reasons to think so. We talked about this last year. And it really kicked off when that astronaut accidentally dialed 9/11 after the cosmonaut accidentally drilled a hole in the space station. So those of us who are watching this critically are like, okay, what are they really saying here? Drilling a hole, a drill, 9/11, and right after there were articles talking about how, because at this time, and this caused a lot of suspicion, right after that hole was drilled, the next two cosmonauts aborted their mission to bring fuel supplies to refuel the ISS. They aborted it, if you remember. So people thought, well, maybe they did something. I certainly thought so. And there was talk of bringing the space station down, leaving it up there unmanned. But that it was basically a jalopy, and it's been 20 years and its time has come. Well, it's been 33 years since, of course, the Challenger explosion. And that would be January 28th. And I do think that bringing it down would be an awesome and epic provocation if you wanted to bring about a convincing World War III where Russia and China are shooting down, like your DirecTV satellite will be the first victim. China will shoot it down and it'll crash in the ocean. I mean, they're going to make you pay attention. And then, of course, the space wars includes cyberspace. So good luck trying to criticize it, which is why it's so important, I think, to get behind our newspaper. We're going into print this year, starting in January. And you can support that by supporting this channel, by going to the store or whatever, because this is just a certain amount we need for a minimum order, but we need to get into print because it's EMP proof. Flat Fact says, who's the astronaut service provider? I want service like that. God, I wish there was some way we could figure it out. Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. Like, there's no way they keep this secret for long. I mean, it's not really that it's been kept. I mean, we know it. We know the truth. Like, I never forget this. Like, I know what's true. I base it off of evidence. You know, I do believe in objective reality. I know that makes me a bad guy to the Mandela affected, but reality exists. It's objective. It's there. And it doesn't change. Oh yes, Sagittarius Arm, his Joker painting. I don't have any more of those, but yes, we've shipped out the last few. I have one going to the UK. I have one going to Jose Martinez. I will send you the tracking number. In fact, let me bring those up. we have a site, flatearthstudios.com, and what we have done is we have made this an open platform for anyone who wants to sell art on consignment or just put their art up there and have people go to your site. But here you can see, here's my latest one, IPS Penguin with Wrench wall decal. So this is an alternative to a painting on the wall. 18 by 12. Here's a link. We also have these available on t-shirts, mugs, and others, but I'm doing one of these designs per week, part of a signature series. Going to do 52 this year. Unless halfway through the year we get our next 9/11 and then of course they kill the internet, which is a possibility. I also have a series of abstract paintings, Finding the Edge. This is number 2 in the series. Here's a link. As you can see here, somewhat abstract, I don't know, whatever you think about it. There's the link. Send the link to somebody who might like it. We're trying to get enough support though on this channel to be able to go into print. Like I said, Survive EMP, I mean, they've been burning our books. How many channels have we lost? I have actually records of it, and I can show how many channels we've had shut down. And what I want to do this year, because I've been talking about this for a couple months now, is I want to create in virtual reality a library that would show what it would actually take to contain all the books that have been burned by the big social media platforms. And by books, I just mean collections of memes, I mean videos, I mean entire comment sections. I mean, what have they just destroyed? Yep, this is the fake rocket that's supposed to kill us on January 1st. I think it's going to hit Seattle. Again, look how fake. Isn't that, I mean, look, this is just fake. I mean, I don't even think there's actual flames coming off it. I think that some of these might just be balloons or basically airships that are probably pushed up with jet propulsion and then they add a bit of CGI, but it might all be After Effects. I'm just looking at this thing with I'm just so incredulous. Like, people actually see this thing and they are afraid. That's about as fake as can be. Anyway, threat grows from North Korea. No, it doesn't. And if any of these politicians were honest, they would say, yeah, this is just a side war, folks. Don't get too triggered. No, but they want you to believe. They want you to be in it. Steve Miller, aka the Joker and the Space Cowboy, Death Faker in 2020. Sure. I mean, I need to know where that prediction's coming from. What's his age? Space Cowboy Joker. Those are some interesting connections. So we'll put down a few other ones here. Here's 13. I just don't want to go too far. We have so many that, they'll say, well, that was just a lucky guess. You had so many guesses, you're going to get one of them right. Most of them are kind of doomy, I have to say. And we're not even a doom boofing channel. Like, we don't even believe in, some of you guys might. I don't believe in chemtrails. Okay, earlier we were talking about Hollow Earth versus Cell Earth. I don't know if I want to go there. Man. I'll just say this. A Hollow Earther went on a live stream from the back of a cop car and accused a Flat Earther of some horrible crimes and accused him or insinuated he was part of a pedo ring. Very, very disturbing stuff, but I'm not going to talk about it on this live stream. It's a developing story. Troll versus Trolls broke it. So if you want to read my personal blog where I do put all the evidence there you go. timosman.space. Blank Search says, why is it always Seattle? Good question. There has been a whole lot. And did you follow that? If you looked into the meta-scripting leading to this idea that Seattle is going to be taken out, I mean, everything from Chris Cornell statue next to the EMP with that labyrinth floor design that matches the floor design in Notre Dame, which just burned. I mean, there was so much there. They put, Seattle represents space. And it is true. We were looking at the iconography of the Space Needle, and it is, in fact, an obelisk. But at the same time, it is a UFO. And so it represents the eschatology of the New Age, the invasion. the space war. That's exactly what it represents. So the Space Needle falling, all highly significant. Also significant, I think, were a few mentions of this Century project and the $100 bill that had the burning Space Needle, where it appeared to show a nuclear detonation high in the sky, which again would signify EMP. And I think it'd be much easier to fake an EMP. So if you live in Seattle, I'm not suggesting that you move, because I'm telling you, the nukes are fake. If they pull it off, it'll be done, it'll be elaborate, but it'll be done in such a way that it'll look more convincing on TV. You'll probably be evacuated or something. But like I said, it's going to be fake. Actually, I was talking to some people that night. I was like, hey, you're in the area. Could you go to the Space Needle and kind of live stream whatever happens? And it turns out they had two major mass casualty live like or drills that day where people were, I think it was called Stop the Bleed. Linda Curtis says the Big Bang in space, conception of a new age. Not bad. And the term conception tied into the Metascript quite heavy when you had a boat called Conception with 33 people burned to death on it the same weekend as the Burning Man Festival, where a 33-year-old died, and it was their 33rd festival. I mean, you're right. Again, 33 years since the Challenger explosion, we've been seeing a whole lot of symbolism involving this Russia being involved as well. If you remember the Phoenix that was supposedly spotted above a Russian power base on the solstice, as the city of Phoenix on the 33rd parallel was burning and they were evacuating parts of it. This is what I think makes the most sense to me. What makes the most sense to me is space wars divided on ideological lines. The way I described it before, the first 9/11 was a war in heaven over the Western concept and the Islamic concept. And this next war in heaven is the new heaven, which is outer space. And it's basically, will we decide upon this version, which is capitalism, freedom, liberty, private property, etc., or for humanity to survive, is it necessary that we become collectivists, communists, living sustainably, even as we expand to the next planet and the next? And that's what it is. Ultimately, we're looking at space communism. So I've got about 13 predictions here. We have a few more, and then I have some things I'd like to happen. So what I want to do is later today, when I get back to take calls, we're going to do our predictions of things that we think might happen that are pretty much doomy. And then I want to put down a list of things that I hope to happen. Not really hope, things that we aim to, things we want to happen, I'll say. Make that known. Kara Capper says Greta Thunberg thanks Sir David Attenborough for inspiring her as they meet for the first time over Skype. Ooh, David Hogg's going to be jealous. She said David Hogg inspired her. Now she's saying it's Sir David Attenborough with his falling walruses. Did you all see that? It's the dumbest thing. It's kind of a scandal. Where he has this video, here he goes, Our Planet, where, this was on Netflix, they're showing walruses falling off a cliff, and they're saying it's because of global warming. Like we're pushing them off a cliff, and they're all dying, and David's out there recording it. Sir David Attenborough. Anyway, listen to this. Netflix has defended their controversial scene in Attenborough's new documentary, Our Planet, which shows walruses falling off the top of a cliff. Many viewers were left distraught in the second part in Frozen Worlds, where there's a large group of walruses in northeast Russia. Anyway, in this piece, the walruses are falling off a cliff. And, of course, you're being blamed for it. It says it highlights that they have poor eyesight, out of water. Walrus is shown half jumping and then falling down the cliff, bouncing against the rocky face. Others follow suit. It's the same tragic fall. And then he shows the bodies at the bottom of the cliff. And he says, in their desperation to return to the sea, they fall from heights they never should have scaled. And he kind of implies that we caused this, or global warming caused it. Well, later it turns out that no, they were actually chased off by polar bears. Blank Search says, I saw a secret message carved on top of the Jimmy Kimmel Live building in Hollywood. It says, Freemasonry sets its temples among the nations and in the hearts of men. Yeah, they're in a Masonic temple. And the more I look into this mud flood theory, the more I think that these Masonic temples and other buildings might be still in some way connected to the architecture of whatever came before. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if underground was far more developed than what we have above ground. I'm just saying, it wouldn't shock me. I look at the priesthood of the day, how they form your worldview, how easy it is for them to program people into, accepting Gulag life, which is their great achievement. The greatest achievement of the space station, the space program, worldwide since its inception, has been this. They've managed to convince property owning free people that the ideal way of life is the Gulag. AJ206 says that MTV Studios New York, also a Masonic lodge. Trustee Shellbeck says Michael Savage was always fearmonger about EMP on his radio show. Yeah, exactly. Look, the guy's an auto believer. He's entertaining. I think he's good at what he does. I used to listen to him sometimes, and then I realized, wait a minute. He treats every single terrorist attack as real, and then he minimizes the school shootings. And then the left, they treat every school shooting as real, and they minimize the terror attacks. So I realized he's just another player in the game. Doesn't surprise me that he would be dropping that hint, though. Strawberry Blind says, my mom's brainwashed into vaccines and thinks they should be forced. Right. Forced, but forced by who is the question? Forced by who? It's just the compulsory thing. If people want to voluntarily line up in these space cattle carts and go to the gulags and farm potatoes, please go. My issue is when you want to impose it on the rest of us. Like, you don't want to give us an opt out. But I've already opted out. I'm not going to Mars with y'all. I'm not going to the moon. I'm not even interested. Even if you can go into space and get a new liver or a new kidney and all these other things they're promising, like, I don't really buy it. To me, it just looks like more utopianism. Stranger Day says, will they make auto hoaxing a crime in 2020? I did put global warming denial gets criminalized. MSM will attack the Mandela effect as dangerous misinfo. Yeah, we should probably put that in here. I'm just not sure how they're going to affect it and how are they going to pull this off. How are they going to make it a crime to not believe the news? And that's essentially what they're doing. It's a hate crime. And of course, hate is a hoax. So I'll put that there as a 14th one. Criminalizing non-belief. They can't do it directly, but they have other ways. They ostracize you. They marginalize you. They push you to the edge. They engage in non-stop character attacks against anyone who goes against the mainstream. Okay, this is a great list. It's a good starting point. I'm going to be back later. We'll be taking calls. Deep Lagoon says, what's going on with this church shooting? Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that really quick. First of all, it's fake. Just like leading up to the last election, Trump was behind in the polls and he needed to win over the LGBT. That's trans. Also includes, if you didn't know, it also includes trans-dimensional. So the Mandela effect did also get special status. Just saying. But about that time, he was losing out heavily, and he said, after that shooting, he said, I will protect you. If only one of you had a gun, you could have stopped him. And that's when they really started this good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun narrative, which is all crap, as you know. It's just part of this idea that there's actually a shooting happening and that they could have stopped it. No, it was fake. But again, that was done to elevate him to that particular voting demographic, and it did. And so when I saw this, I'm like, wait, this is the good guys with the gun narrative. Totally fake. And so here's a few things I noticed right off the bat. And if you didn't know, autohoax.com is where we cover all these events as they happen. So right off the bat, my initial assessment, and again, they took my video down off YouTube. violated terms of service, no harm, no foul. If you go to autohoax.com, it's actually embedded in library. So you can get it there. Here's a link. AJ says, do you think something big will happen with Greta this year? Let me go ahead and add that. I do think so. Because Greta is mentally ill, and she's white, and she's angry, and she believes in conspiracy theories because she believes in global warming. So I am putting on here for number 16 that Greta is going to shoot up a Walmart. Just put that there in the notes. Okay, so this shooting, first of all, it's Church of Christ. Christ Church, mosque shooting, Church of Christ. Immediately, I'm like, okay, seems a little hoaxy. So who is the shooter at Christ Church? Pop quiz. Who is the shooter at Christ Church? And if you haven't seen it, Christ Church shooting documentary by the Infinite Plane Society. And this documentary will tell you everything you need to know about it. Mostly that it was fake, and we've demonstrated it to be fake. Okay, the guy's name was Brenton Tarrant. Tarrant. So this shooting that just happened was done in Tarrant County. Church of Christ, Tarrant County. Christchurch shooting, Brenton Tarrant. Very interesting correlation. It was on Las Vegas Trail, so there you invoke Las Vegas. The elevation of the church is 666 feet. Don't know if that means anything to you. Happened at 11 a.m. 3 people shot, including the shooter. 11 times 3, 33. It looks fake. That's all I have so far. But right off the bat, it looks fake, and it's got meta scripting all over it. So I'll drop that in the chat. These are just points to bring up. Tarrant County, Christ Church, Church of Christ. Good guy with a gun is the narrative. So this was a right-wing terror attack. Just like the left will fake shootings in schools. Well, this is a right-wing thing. Even the synagogue shootings, often these are right-wing things. Linda says the guy pointed the gun at the guy in the suit, and the guy was alive later in the scene. Oh yeah, I mean, that's why I made this video available to you. Because they put it out there, and then they had this fake outrage where they say, oh, it was streamed on YouTube. Gonna have to shut down YouTube. Even Drudge was hyping that up. It's like, look, live streamed on YouTube. Parishioner who gunned down killer says he's no hero. Hey, one other thing. We've been talking about this lack of UFO sightings since people started carrying around smartphones, and they've been bringing out a lot of UFOs lately. Thirst for Truth said half a dozen people pulled out their pistols. I know, as a joke. I mean, that's so hilarious. It's like all these people just pull out their guns and they start firing. Clearly, this is choreographed, and you could tell by some of the actors here. I mean, it's pathetic. It's kind of diabolical if you think about it. That these people are willing to use a church. Same with the people with the fake shooting in the mosque. Like, you're going to take advantage of the faithful. But then again, you kind of ask for it. Trust the news, trust your pastor, just blindly trust. New York, bizarre white objects float over cloud. So they're basically hyping this up again and again. Denver, there was like a cloud of 30 large drones no one could identify. And look, hey, this shooting here, I haven't found anything regarding who did it, but you also have the Black Hebrew Israelites. You have a lot of anti-Semitic attacks that all occur right after Borat gets the award for talking about hate. To me, this is all scripting. And again, we predicted it. We said as we move closer into the election year, we're going to see more terror attacks and more provocative, high-profile, fake hate crimes, because this is how they get people to vote. Also, the screams. And there was a kid in the back. I don't know if you guys saw it. There's a kid in the back who covers his ears, like right before the shooting. I don't know. There's a few things worth looking at. We'll probably analyze that video frame by frame later on today. Another reason to get on the autohoax.com mailing list. On that mailing list, autohoax.com, you'll get daily updates whenever a hoax happens so that you can inoculate yourself against the effects of treating this horrible news as real. Yeah, look, Slate.com actually put this out. 2019 is the year that flying saucers became legitimate, sighted across 8 states. Huge sightings in New York, big sighting in Vegas. U.S. government did become more chatty about flying saucers. They put them all over Fox News. They want you to believe in UFOs. Isn't that funny how you used to be a tinfoil hatter? But if you didn't know, and you should know this, there's a documentary right now called Miragemen. And in Miragemen, they actually show you that everything that you see here regarding UFO sightings, UFO mythology, underground bases with hybrids fighting wars with the UFO, Area 51, all this stuff was actually created by the Air Force, written by the Air Force, promulgated by special agents. It's all fake. Deep Lagoon says so many hate crimes on the news. Look, 66 to 70% of reported hate crimes are later found out to be fake. And so, in other words, 100% of them are fake, maybe 99% are fake. But 33% of them get away with it. I mean, it is that bad. Okay, I got the 12 predictions that I needed. Actually, we got about 17 predictions. So thanks everyone here for your comments. We do think we're going to have space wars, USA versus China, Russia, Iran, maybe EMP. ISS will be put down. Mandela affected believers will be locked up, as all conspiracy theorists will be quarantined. Global warming denial will be criminalized. China will go to Mars in 2020. I checked again, it's not the moon. They're going to the Mars. They're going to settle Mars. There's going to be a flood that takes out Houston. Seattle's going to get the fake nuke. There'll be an Independence Day event at the White House. You know, that's actually probably right on, because last year, last May, a guy set himself on fire in front of the White House, and he was wearing a USA shirt. Death fakers say goodbye to Shia LaBeouf, Cardi B, Selena Gomez. Flat Earth will have an answer, courtesy of Mad Mike Hughes, summer 2020. No spoilers here. And finally, a couple extra ones. Joker and the Space Cowboy might be a death faker 2020. They may criminalize auto hoaxing. And Greta, a mentally ill, angry conspiracy theorist, may shoot up a Walmart. And that's all coming up in 2020. So, hey, thanks for joining. Like I said, I'll be back later to take calls. If you want to go ahead and get on the mailing list, the link is below. And definitely get into the Patreon. It's $1 cover charge, gets you into Discord. I will see you later.